Hello, everybody out there in Autism Land, and thank you for joining us at Autistic Radio once again. Thank you also to our sponsors, coldpack.co.uk. They're the people who make the cold packs which have the details of the clinic printed directly on them. So it reminds the patient about the clinic, but it's also the best cold pack. When you use coldpack.co.uk to get your supplies, we here receive a healthy donation, and thank you to them. And they donate to make programs like this. It's Harry's 555 Spectrum Voices. Over to you, mate.
Thanks, Jules. Hello, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 8th of March 2026, and this is where we share posts from the Facebook page of autisticradio.com. And as always, we start with a poem. And the poem this week is from the Autistic Poet. And he introduces the following poem. This is a poem based on a real tragic event which happened in a nearby village back in March 1905. I met a lovely couple this afternoon who were able to tell me exactly where the pond used to be. If they read this, thank you. And it's called Echoes of the Mill Pond. Does anyone know what happened last night? I took out the rubbish. It froze me with fright. It tore through the dark and made light of my skin. It sought out my heart and it echoed within. A scream launched with sorrow, pain, and regret. Does anyone know what happened last night? Loud, clattering sound, then an ear-wrecking cry. I reckoned a man, though I could not tell, and maybe the sobs of a woman as well. My hair was soaked through, though the footpath was dry. Does anyone know what happened last night? I felt stricken with grief, but I just don't know why. A strong smell of gasoline hung in the breeze. I swear I heard wood split, the snapping of trees, the scraping of metal, the screeching of tires. Does anyone know what happened last night? I hope that I'm wrong, but I fear someone's lost. Voices were calling out somebody's name over and over, but nobody came. Then came down the mist, and I started to cough. Does anyone know what happened last night? The gloom grabbed my throat, and I felt short of breath. The light of the moon making shapes in the swirl. I saw three figures, two adults, one girl. Their eyes burned right through me, and I glimpsed a death. Let me help you out. I know what you saw. They are the ghosts of Shafua, a lady, her niece. Sadly, these people no longer alive. The noises relate back to 1905, a crash that still echoes most nights on this street. Those people's thoughts.
Well, bravo to you, mate. That was a lovely reading of that. Yeah, creepy. And nice use of the repetition and the tempo and the meter of it to get that feeling over.
Yeah, I love the repetition. And I think it's hard to do rhyming when you're telling a story. And I don't believe I've read or heard such a haunting poem. I mean, some of them haunt you in a different way, but this was storytelling.
You know, in some ways, it was kind of campfire stuff, wasn't it? It was people at a table with a candle and somebody, uh, really putting it in like Harry and their voice. It's a performance poem, isn't it?
It does remind me of the campfire ghost stories when I used to be in the Scouts. And although it wasn't this particular story or any story like that, but it's like the artistic mind, the vision of on top of myself, and just even though you see the picture, but you're thinking of what's been described, and because it's a tragedy, the deep feeling that comes within, and I just found the poem very powerful, and it creates a dark vision, dark thoughts in terms of what the story's telling, but it's definitely I like the rhythm of it, and I like the way it was written. And as Jesus says, it's not easy to do the rhyme the way that was put down.
I wonder if the world in general would be surprised at how many autistic poets there are. I have never been surprised about it, but because of stereotypes, I don't believe people know.
Well, there's at least three poets in this virtual room in terms of writing poetry, in the past. And we actually have read some, from Robbie and from GR. So, yeah, I know what you're saying. I think a lot with poetry or with anything, with writing or performance, there's a lot of autistic people because that's how they, I suppose, channel emotions and thoughts. And sometimes they can be done so beautifully and other people like them, it becomes, a regular thing. The next post is from Flourish with Neurodiversity. Under a coach, helping you flourish and thrive, not just survive. Neurodiversity coaching and services, ADHD, AUDHD, and Tourette's, adults and children, work school, PIP, DLA, EHCP, support training and resources, free Flourish Neurodivergent Hub, and they're based in the UK. And it shared the following. Hello from Flourish. Who are we? We wanted to introduce ourselves properly as we're connecting in so many new spaces this year. We are Flourish with Neurodiversity. We are all neurodivergent and passionate about creating supportive, affirming spaces for neurodivergent adults, especially those navigating life as ADHD, AUDHD, late diagnosed, queer, non binary, still figuring things out, or simply any neurodivergent adult looking for community and understanding. At flourishwithneurodiversity.com, we offer coaching, support, and services for adults, children, teens, parents, and organisations. We also provide training, guidance, and resources to help create more neurodivergent, affirming environments at home, in education, and in the workplace. What we do: we offer bespoke neurodivergent coaching, support, and services, as well as curating resources, community spaces, support groups, check ins, and honest conversations around AUDHD and ADHD lived experience, dual and multiple neurotypes, including Tourette syndrome, parenting neurodivergent children, sensory support, navigating workplaces and education, identity and unmasking, late diagnosis, burnout and nervous system care, gender diversity and neurodivergence, practical tools for everyday life, and feeling less alone in it all. Our aim is to create a one-stop shop for our neurodivergent peers. We offer neurodivergent adults working in the UK free access to work application support to apply for funding for specialist coaching, support and software. Flourish membership is a supportive online space with resources, guidance, community, one-to-one support and so much more. Our page AUDHD and then some on Patreon, real conversation about neurodivergent life. And there's also our Etsy shop, Flourish ND Hub. We're building spaces that centre compassion, unmasking, and community for people like us. Because so many of us grew up feeling too much or not enough. We are so glad to be here with you all. You can also reach us at any time and provided an email address. What's your thoughts? People heard of this?
Um, I have a vague familiarity. Um, they press all the buttons, don't they? They're neurodivergent themselves. They're supporting a wide range of people. They're looking at it from the neurodiversity spectrum. Um, it all looks, completely and utterly pucker, and people should knock down their door and find out more about it for themselves and make their own minds up about it. It looks, everything about it says yes to me.
One of the things I like, and I hope I understood it correctly, is that they also educate communities, or um, maybe they're maybe they mean people who don't know about it, whole groups of people, which would be good if I understand that correctly.
It states that they aim to create a one-stop shop. In a recent conversation with a friend, um, he mentioned to me that these, I think it's a one-stop shop he was talking about, something like number 6. It only exists in Scotland and doesn't exist in England. Is that correct?
It
Yeah,
says UK wide.
the one-stop shops in Scotland are a particular group, and they've got particular funding to them. It came out of a previous government initiative on what to do about autistic people.
That being Scottish Government, so that'd be the distinction then, the funding issue, because
Yeah,
that's what my friend
yeah.
was talking about.
I think they're using the term one-stop shop in its normal sense, as in a place where you go to get everything all at once. You don't have to go into other addresses to get something different. All encompassing.
Yeah, not to be confused with that sort of semi-official term. Um, I was going to go off on a tangent because they mentioned Tourette's. I was wondering what people's general reactions were to what happened at the BAFTAs.
Well, I thought it was unfortunate because anybody who has a bit of knowledge about Tourette's knows that the kind of words that end up being used in stress as tics are often the very most taboo words of the environment in which the person's in, you know. Um, so they say inappropriate things about women when a woman's on the stage, or inappropriate uh, terms for black people when a black person is presented, because it clicks, it two things get joined together in the synapses in the brain, and the word that isn't supposed to be said comes out. Um, and this should have been entirely understood. And why there was a microphone that appeared to be not monitored next to what they knew was, you know, they're there to celebrate an actor for playing a character who can't do anything other than tick these words in different circumstances. Um, but they don't arrange it so that they can turn his microphone off to stop him being embarrassed by involuntary words. You know, it feels to him as though he got let down, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like inclusiveness that goes to such a degree that there is no management. And I hate using that word management, but we've got to say it.
But I can't remember the guy's name. But he did not. He's an advocate. He comes from near me, and he's won an award from the state here, um, for his advocacy for Tourette's and understanding of Tourette's. The last thing he wanted to happen was him be at the center of a controversy where somebody got offended by words, because whoever says those words, they're offensive when they're ringing out around an auditorium when two men, professional men, are on stage, and they did well to continue in a professional manner, because it was a shocking thing to be confronted with, and very confusing.
I haven't kept up with this, but I know about it. I think um, it took everybody off guard, but maybe it shows that whole communities could use um, education like the type that this group might have provided. Um, and then, just as an aside, Delroy Lindo, I did the genealogy for him for the TV show Finding Your Roots.
It's the first time that I've heard Tourette's being, maybe I'm picking up this wrong, it's part of the neurodivergence thing. It's part of the paradigm, it's part of it's added with autism and ADHD. Because I haven't heard that or read that being kind of shared before, only with this organisation.
I believe I have.
Yeah, Tourette's, uh, essentially the kind of things that people have about them that are on based on a different kind of brain, a different brain type. Uh, Down syndrome people are part of the neurodiversity paradigm. People with Tourette's, it's quite a wide group in that way. We tend to only talk about the autism and ADHD part of it because they're kind of closer to us. But when you look at the whole idea of neurodiversity as a paradigm, it points out lots of different groups that are part of it.
I'm just thinking that in this context, what you're discussing there, some things can be self-identification and some can't. Because I was dwelling a bit on the ADHD term because I hear it a lot and people seem to prioritise it almost like it's their preference. But you wouldn't, go for the other multiple neurotypes that are, and identify with them to a certain extent.
I think this is politics, isn't it? ADHD and autism and AU mixtures. These have become terms that people use as identities, and we are trying to influence the medical group to see it more like that as well. It's become politics. What you call yourselves, how you decide to declare, the language you use. You are finding factions and fractions within a large spectrum group. It's a turbulent time politically.
Or for meaning and identity.
It's helping me personally to think about it that way in dynamics of people, because in my family, when I was raising my children, they have different neurodivergent brains than I do, but we fit together. And even though I didn't know I was, now when I'm reflecting on their lives and my life as a mother, I think maybe I was a good mother for them, even though I didn't know. But of course, you're not always a good mother.
No, you're a human being. You're a human being and a parent. Yeah. But you're probably absolutely right. I think it was an advantage to me to have parents that were neurodivergent. It was definitely an advantage for my daughter to have two neurodivergent parents, because we got things that other people wouldn't get. Even when we hadn't ourselves framed it within neurodivergence, even just us doing what came naturally, and figuring it out as a family. So there are advantages. In some ways, we could think of this as the wisdom of the crowd, couldn't we? If it's political, if it's politics, if people deciding what they want to define themselves, how they want to put forward as the first thing, the major thing about themselves, that is actually now making the ground, that's making the decisions, that's defining things, and as well as sort of choosing the best way forward by kind of a group average by the wisdom of crowds, it is actually creating it at the same time, because it's a dynamic process.
And they seem to be advocating too, if I got that part correctly, that they will work with communities. Um, but I remember I advocated really hard for, especially my son, to the, yeah. So I like this. It's better to have an advocate who is also.
The next post is from Neurodivergent Lou, who shared a presentation. And she says, as an autistic person, the repeated experience of subtle negative social interactions can be incredibly distressing. Of course, I can't talk tonight. As an autistic person, the repeated experience of subtle negative social interactions can be incredibly distressing. As an autistic person, communicating differently to the majority of the world who are not autistic can lead to repeated negative social experiences. Sometimes what might look to others as subtle negative experiences can be incredibly difficult or distressing for an autistic person. Examples is like specifically choosing the words that you use, but still people reading into what you said with something that isn't there. Watching other people doing the typical things of people your age, like parties, group trips, etc., whilst being alone. When you say something in a group conversation but no one acknowledges or says anything back, then someone says a similar thing and everyone responds. Being taken advantage of by other people in a friendship but not realising it. Being told that is not too loud or not too overstimulated when the environment is painfully overstimulating. It being assumed that you don't care about, love the other person because you show it differently. Like sharing a relatable story to show that you care may be misinterpreted as selfishness. Other people being embarrassed to be friends with you, not wanting to introduce you to their other friends due to this. When you're in a group of people and feel everyone glance at each other whenever you say anything. What's people's thoughts on this?
This week I was in a cafe with a autistic friend, and at one point he got so passionate he was kind of really in my face, like he leant over the table and got really close, and I put my arm out and just said, could you go back a little bit, you're a wee bit too intense. And this was an autistic friend. And then because it was quite a busy cafe, I was handling it, but I was getting a wee bit sensitive. And so behind me, a family with a young child, they all started coughing, and the child wouldn't stop coughing. And I thought, has that child got an illness? Am I about to be infected by germs? So it made me a bit anxious. And my friend said, oh, the kid's just choking on food. And I thought, well, this is pretty persistent choking. I mean, are they feeding the child properly? Because it's been going on for 10 minutes. And it really disturbed my ability to concentrate and to be there for my friend, and made it difficult for him because I wasn't quite there. You know, I was basically wanting to get away or rearrange the situation somehow. But eventually I just sat there and accepted it all, as you have to do sometimes.
Those examples of situations, or no, how a person might feel in a situation, that was such a interesting and good list because they were general enough and also specific enough to know, and they seem to go from the most frequent or the most likely to the sort of still likely but less common. And it really did take me a bit down memory lane. Those things happen, um, even in adulthood.
When I was reading through the too loud bit, I wasn't. What I was thinking before I realised what it meant, it was talking about the environment, is someone saying to me, I'm being too loud. You know, I think I've said this many times before. It's like I'm happy and I talk dead loud and I get louder because I'm happy and having a good time. And it just seems to be in people's faces and they kind of go, you know, something subtly, not so subtly, to be quiet or quieting down. And that irritates me because that's me being happy. And then someone kind of jumping on it to kind of try and stop me being naturally happy. And I'm not. It's just one of those things that just people try to control you or manage you, or people just misinterpreting it as something else.
I feel as though once I've listed all these things, I have to have something to do with it. And then I think to myself that the self-knowledge of recognizing that these repetitive situations that happen to us, that we recognize, have built up and are building up and are repetitive, and as they said in it, it's the repetition of the tiny slights, the tiny negs, the tiny things. A little bit like when women experience the everyday small sexisms that just keep pushing you down, grinding you down. But once you've recognized it, you can almost be released from it. Once you've recognized that these things are happening and you see them, you can stop them, and you can actually either deal with them in the moment and try and experiment with changing the situation, which is radical and hard and difficult and challenging. But if you can't do that, you can even just take the power out of these situations by just recognizing them. It really is just saying, I've seen this before. I've dealt with it before. It doesn't need to accumulate. I've recognized that it could be something that wears on me and accumulates, and I'm just not going to let that process happen. I'm going to take control of this. So that's what I take from this.
The point I was making was that even with autistic people, it gets intense.
That's a really good point.
I think anyone can get intense. I mean, that's the, dare I say, the beauty of being human. It's like everyone's different. And people assume because you're autistic as well as the other person that you can deal with their personality traits and the way they behaviour and excuse everything that they do, but that's not the case. It's just sometimes you can even be more sensitive to them than they are to other people.
I think I've just been very intense myself.
I was intense last week. And the time before that, I was in grade 8. That was a joke.
But I'm noticing that autistic people can sometimes not pick up on these so-called subtle signals that you may be putting out, which I think is being expressed in this post, and is often, a source of disappointment for many autistic people.
But we don't miss the eye rolls and all of the rest of that.
No, you're right, Teresa. Bullying comes off this stuff. You know, it, it, this is repetitive, and it is a bullying group. It is a social them against us situation. It is, are you in the in crowd? Are you in the out crowd? It's all of those things, and it is a it is a continuous grind. It's an absolute present thing when you're autistic. I suppose what I come from is I can't do a fuck about this. This is almost so much part of my expectation, my experience since my early teens, that somehow I don't play the game in the way that other people are playing it to make me feel the way that this person is feeling from it. And I'm trying to access what it is that's different for me. But it seems that from a very early age, I was desensitized, or I had a different way of thinking about what this person is experiencing from those things that I recognize as happening.
Do you think it's because your parents were autistic?
Do you know, I don't think I ever had the assumption that everyone else in the world had got it right and that I'd got it wrong. I never felt that isolated from the idea um, that however I experienced life, somebody else had a similar kind of way about it or experience. So maybe just the shared experience of the home meant that I didn't go through what other autistic people seem to express, which is that they thought everyone else was getting it right and it was only them that was getting it wrong. I just looked at the world and just saw it was very different. People worked in very different ways. I found it fascinating, but I didn't think that they were better or in the right, you know?
I do know because until I was 6, almost 7, I was with my father, and ev- it was all. I felt so confident until I wasn't anymore, and I was with. Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like a control group.
I used to find a lot of these things distressing, but I've got to the point that I don't have to accept other people's opinions.
Isn't it also the case that if you go looking for these things, you'll see them everywhere?
I don't know about that, but I have a feeling that now that I know that they're part of this, that so many other people experiencing it are experiencing that way. If I were, I feel like I wouldn't go to a party where there are people who I know as grown adults would do this to me, and there are. But if I happen to, I feel like I might say something now, like something like just slip right into a conversation, but I see that you don't get it anyway. And then just kind of say, I'm going home now.
Well, I told the guy in Costa who was serving us that I didn't want a chocolate cookie because it was lying out there exposed to the air.
We all rebel in our own individual way. But I get what you're saying there, Teresa. There's an empowerment from knowing and recognizing when people do these lovely posts, putting it all together, um, and then we recognize ourselves in it. We go away slightly empowered that just the recognition means that we don't have to put up with this shit.
Which is why this post is great, I guess. You know,
Basically, what we do here at Autistic Radio in one way or a form most of the time. We don't have to put up with this shit. People don't have to think of us in these negative ways. We can feel confident about ourselves. We don't have to put ourselves down. We can find the things that are good for us and we can amplify and work on them. And we can improve things for ourselves as a group. You know, that's what we need to be out here to be saying.
there are plenty of whatever we call people who are not neurodivergent who are so positive to be around. It's just a subset of people who will be that way. And I feel like recognizing that they're not worth it for us is great, and that these people posting things like this to younger and younger audiences, people who are going to know more than we did, are going to save people from a lot of bad situations.
I think it's okay to also be weird and not be forced into social situations that you don't want to be a part of.
It's totally great to be weird. Now, I have a funny example of one of these situations. So, I didn't get invited to parties, but my sister, super social. Once I was coming home from the library and I'm walking in the front door and I like get out of the vestibule into the hallway and a bunch of these popular kids similar in age to me are playing spin the bottle, and it just so happened that the bottle pointed right at me, and I just kept going up to upstairs.
The next post is from Autistic Village. It's an education website, an autistic community that seeks to educate about autistic community, culture, and identity. And it's in relation to comments that was said from Dame Jutta Frith, who is a developmental psychologist and a professor based at the Institute of the Cognitive Neuroscience at Universal College London. And it's also based on Dr. Naomi Fisher, who works in autism, in reaction to it. Before we get into the post, I mean, are people aware of this? It was what Jutta Frith said, from what I've seen from the headline. I didn't read it because people said it was upsetting. It was that autism is no longer a spectrum, or it isn't a spectrum. It's something along those lines.
GR brought this up at the 444 back stage, and there's quite a lot of conversation about this. I am somebody that she would no longer include as autistic, I'm guessing. The pendulum of somebody who tried to broaden out the concept of autism, that she really was part of the starting of it, the neurodiversity movement towards that. And now she's that feeling that pendulum's gone too far and people like myself shouldn't be classed as autistic. Well, I'm fucking autistic. The genie's out the bottle. I understand my autism from the neurodiversity paradigm, and I understand it as a very much wider group of people that Uta Frith now wants to concentrate on, and I don't accept it. I think it's time for her to retire and move on and let the whole field of autism develop and develop with the information that's gleaned from the autistic community themselves, including people like me, somebody who is identified late in life. So everything that is being used by the right-wing press here to be part of the culture wars, I feel ashamed that Uta would be putting out this kind of thing that gives them the way to use it against us like this.
I'm thinking maybe when she was um, expressing this idea of the spectrum and whatnot, she didn't have generosity in mind at the time. I don't know because I'm not going to read it, and I just think she's already retired and just like doesn't like things to be out of her control. But I have a feeling that she probably wanted us to autistic people to still be part of like the controlled world of behaviorism, and she's not liking the way it's going, and we don't really care.
I'll read the post itself from Autistic Village and their response. I have been mulling over Jutta Frith's article and Naomi Fisher's response to it. Mulling. To give time for me to get Dino Brain out of the control room. Because the first response was visceral. Fear and anger in equal measure. A lot of name calling and insults going on in my head at the harm these two are choosing to cause autistics in order to try and platform their own authority. And make no mistake, in an era where disabled rights are being removed and negated, harm was caused. Their stance provides validations to those who seek to exclude us. No need to accept and accommodate. Experts tells us it's a disorder to be fixed or eradicated. But once Dino Brain finished roaring long enough to really think about it, my key emotion is pity. Pity for experts once lauded and praised for spouting their best guesses based purely on observation and assumption. To go from hero to zero in your lifetime with your work superseded by more accurate and more nuanced research must be hard. To have the very people that you consider so much less than that they weren't worth talking about, to have the very people that you consider so much less than that they weren't worth talking to be the ones to invalidate your work must be even harder. To know you'll end up as a footnote of researchers who got it wrong is a very bitter pill to swallow. To know that the God of knowledge that you worshipped and followed all your life was a false God based solely on prejudice and arrogance must be heartbreaking. Too much pain to face, so better not to face it. Better to pretend, even to yourself, that you are still the expert the world once credited you for being. Better to pretend all the new knowledge isn't real, especially since the source is from people you considered as less than nothing. People comment on how surprising it is that someone once considered a leader in the field seems to have failed to keep up with the current knowledge. Except it's not surprising when to do so means acknowledging how very wrong you were. Arrogance, prejudice, and ignorance are very toxic. Arrogance, prejudice, and ignorance are a very toxic combination. A combination fostered and promoted in academia, where all the current research is meant to be validated by citing prior research, not challenging it. Where professors are treated as arbiters of knowledge despite not having read anything new in several decades. Naomi Fisher claims she's just listening to an alternative perspective while making it clear that the alternative she promotes is actually the establishment narrative, the historical narrative, where professionals went unchallenged and autistics were allowed no voice. That's not alternative. That's clinging to a past time where you were once considered relevant. Things have moved on. Learning has left them behind in a backwater. And instead of putting in the effort or keeping up to date and moving their thinking forward, they cling to the past. And I very much wish that if they don't want to or aren't able to keep learning, they at least were ignored for the historical anachronisms they are. Unfortunately, there are too many still in power who want to stop time moving forward, to hold research at a point that was comfortable for their mindset. So even though they are to be pitied, Dino Brain isn't wrong to fear them. History may erase them, but not before they've caused a lot of devastation as they exit. What's people's thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was a lovely, lovely FU. It kind of reminds me of the scene in Fried Green Tomatoes where these young women steal an older woman's parking spot. Um, and we're not young. I think we see her for what she is. And let's face it, lady, we don't care.
Reading that, it felt so powerful that I was having difficulty there reading it through, because the anger there, the emotion there, the anger, the outburst anger that they were feeling at first, they let that pass, but then they used it to channel their respectful, and it was respectful, response to what they feel is absolutely devastating, infuriating piece of information that's been shared, someone's opinion. I think I seen somewhere else that the same person said, the Jutta Frith was talking about, that people are accommodating their own sort of agenda, or it's like basically people are too comfortable being autistic. It's like you're not supposed to be comfortable being autistic. She's the expert, she knows what she's talking about, you're nothing, sort of thing. So you can feel the fury in those words, but it was done in a beautiful way. And I don't know how long it would take me to put such a response. I mean, I haven't even read what was said or heard what she said. And I don't want to, because I think I will get upset, because I just go, right. What I would do, what I was going to do, was share it eventually. If it was not tonight, it would be some other time. But I wouldn't read it fully myself because of the upset it would cause, because the ignorance in the world is just so, yeah, it just really infuriates. For all the good work that's happening out there, there's people trying to drag you back so they can have a wee bit of power. Well, not even a wee bit of power, a lot of power. The next post is from the Autistic Advocate, who's an author. Kieran Rose is an autistic consultant, academic researcher, author, trainer, and international speaker. And he shared a quote. If, as a non-autistic person, you don't understand or don't know the many deep and complicated narratives that surround us as autistic people, then you have a responsibility to either learn them or step back. And he also added, or retire. Most people's thoughts.
Now that I've stopped laughing, yes, sir.
It feels, in my opinion, that it's actually linked to the previous post, but I may be wrong, because this could be said to a lot of people. We'll move on to the next one's a video, so we'll move on to the next one, which is The next post is AUDHD Not Broken, who is a writer, has a podcast, and a digital creator. Share my life as a AUDHDer plus parenting ND kids, home of Dearest Anna. My ridiculous life updates, ghostwritten by Susan, my ChatGPT overlord. Plus, I now have a podcast. And see also, I do believe in Eleanor. I'm based in the UK. And they said the following: finding everything harder as an autistic person is not a moral failing. What's your thoughts? I find it's quite sad that this needs to be said or typed out to be read. Is people feel their failures and made to feel their failures because they don't cope or do what the so-called normal people are supposed to do, in terms of coping with life, the sensitivities thing, the body clock, the routine, lack of it, or sudden changes causes much distress. And when you do that in society, in the big bad world, and it's not understood, you're made to feel like a failure. And sometimes, certainly in my case, the failure part is a lot of it's within rather than someone else saying it. Like if I've got a task to do, like going to the shop, for instance, and just one day I just wasn't feeling up to it. I just wasn't feeling ready to go outside with all the noise and the smells and all the sensitive things. And I felt that I was failing to do a simple task. So I think it's important for this to be said, to be read and repeated in oneself, that if you're unable to do something and it's autism that's causing it, don't feel bad. Just take it as a lesson and then do it in your own time when you can. What's other people's thoughts? Well, thanks everyone. Once again, it was a good conversation. We kind of went through quite a lot tonight. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 8th of March 2026, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is live every Sunday, 5:55 p.m. to 7 p.m. UK time. So I look forward to doing it again next week, and I'll say cheerio.